Good call. Can't hear me. I was muted. Okay. Jeez. Live for a minute and a half. Okay, so about 30 seconds of what you can hear me. All right. Thanks everyone for joining in tonight. Big love. Big love. We are talking cold fusion. We are talking plasma. We are talking electrolysis, electrochemistry, alchemy 101. It is going to be epic time here learning together. First off, between Bert and Ernie there, my regular electrolysis jars full of monoatomics, diatomics, and this basic cold fusion of breaking down the metals and then transmuting them, this alchemy process that I learned from Sir Isaac Newton's alchemy writings, that I've been doing so many experiments on over the last decades, and putting it together with other amazing people's research and work over the decades as well, like Jeremy Rys, the alien scientist, good friend of mine. We were going to go live tonight, but instead he had to postpone to tomorrow, so I will be back with Jeremy tomorrow night. But we will play some of his older clips. They're a bunch of 10-minute, over decade-old YouTube clips on free energy, cold fusion, sacred geometry, and all the best. So, without further ado, I just actually watched this video for the first time today and was just like, oh my god, yes. I need to talk about this because it is everything that I am doing and we're all working on together here. So, 12 years ago, Jeremy Rys, the alien scientist, while Obama was in office.
Here's the challenge that we have. We don't yet have the technological breakthroughs that can completely replace fossil fuels.
Oh, really?
Unless somebody here invents something tomorrow, which would be very helpful. And if you have it, let me know. We'll get it going right away. But
Mr. President, the U.S. Navy should have already briefed you on their recent alpha scanning detection of tritium byproducts produced by SPA-WAR, the U.S. Navy's Cold Fusion Research Center. We have direct evidence of low-level nuclear reactions occurring in laboratories all over the world. Now all we need is the physics and the theory to get it to work right consistently. Mr. President, I have it, and now I am letting you know, so you can get it going right away. I think you said it best.
We can't drill our way out of the problem. That's why we've got to get moving on this clean energy. It's one of my highest priorities, and I think it's got to be one of our highest strategic priorities as an economy. It has the potential of being an enormous growth industry.
Oh, you ain't kidding. This is a revolution that has been long overdue. Cold fusion has been like a genie, shrugging at all of our scientists who haven't figured out that he only appears when you rub the lamp, and he doesn't appear unless you rub the lamp. The only problem is that the cold fusion reaction is a bit more complicated than rubbing a lamp. For one,
Give me some of
it
that
only seems to
magical
occur
cold fusion,
at or around
please.
the 50 nanometer dimension, meaning that precision nanotechnology will be needed to produce working reactors. Defective palladium cathodes created a wave of experimental skepticism when laboratories found that they could not reproduce the reaction. This was due to impurities within the metal, which changed the lattice structure and thus shifted the dimensions of the lattice. The stimulation frequency was also a key factor in catalyzing the reaction. But more importantly, understanding the relation between the 50 nanometer dimension and the 14 megahertz stimulation frequency. And that's where physics has come to the rescue. In the book, What is Quantum Mechanics by the Lex Foundation, a team of scientists explain the deepest mysteries in quantum physics, namely the fine structure constant and the velocity of the quantum transition. These scientists explain that if the velocity of the quantum transition were known, it would solve all kinds of problems in modern quantum theory. They were correct. This velocity of quantum transition was revealed to us in the last place that the theoretical physicists were seriously considering. The key to cold fusion is artificially stimulating atoms into a state of artificially induced quantum transition, while squeezing them tightly together within the confines of a 50 nanometer lattice structure. While stimulating these atoms at their resonant atomic velocity of 1,094,000 meters per second, or 2 over 137 times the speed of light, the strong nuclear fields which bind the atom slip out of alignment, thinking they are absorbing a photon, but instead 2 nuclei are absorbed into one, and fusion proceeds. Cold fusion is here. The Coulomb barrier is much easier to break by outsmarting the atom than trying to strong-arm it by brute force like the hot fusion scientists have been trying and failing at for years. Trillions of dollars have been sunk into hot fusion research, and hot fusion scientists have been eager to hold on to that kind of funding.
All right, so I have to I'm pausing it right here and I'm rewinding it about a minute because this is just key stuff that Jeremy is covering and that I'm going to be pausing and have a few comments to make on it because it is just so crucial to the cold fusion and understanding it. And right here, how he's explaining the original MArttin Fleischman's Pons cold fusion and yeah, give this another listen because this is just so crucial to the scam and cover-up that happened.
For scientists who haven't figured out that he only appears when you rub the lamp, and he doesn't appear unless you rub the lamp. The only problem is that the cold fusion reaction is a bit more complicated than rubbing a lamp. For one, it only seems to occur at or around the 50 nanometer dimension, meaning that precision
as in
nanotechnology will be
monoatomic
needed to produce working reactors. Defective palladium cathodes created a wave of experimental skepticism when laboratories found that they could not reproduce the reaction. This was due to impurities within the metal, which changed the lattice structure and thus shifted the dimensions of the lattice. The stimulation frequency was also a key factor in catalyzing.
All right, did you hear that? He's saying the lattice structure because it was an impure metal that they used when replicating the Pons-Fleischmann cold fusion experiments. They used impure, and that's what altered the shape, the crystalline lattice structure of the reaction. So then it messed up the whole nano level reaction that is this cold fusion low energy nuclear reactions. And it's so crucial, and that's why they got all of those failed results. And it's that science intentionally failed it. They intentionally did them wrong. And the real science was and still is done and proves that this is all real. It's all denied. And let us continue some more with this.
The reaction. But more importantly, understanding the relation between the due to impurities within the metal, which changed the lattice structure and thus shifted the dimensions of the lattice. The stimulation frequency was also a key factor in catalyzing.
A stimulation frequency is also a key factor. What does that mean? That means that is the resonant frequency, the vibration of that lattice structure. So you have to have the resonant frequency of that matter, and then you're going to be putting that wavelength, that energy into this reaction, this cold fusion, low energy nuclear reaction, and boom, that's how you get these big shifts and formations. but it's all happening within water, and the magical of water and salt and the crystallization and just the fusion and transmutations within the water, the H2O, the atomic hydrogen, and then the resonant frequencies. What up, esoteric gold in the house, Mike, my man, and of course join the technicians, JP, Exotic Propulsion, his second channel as well. Two of my fellow alchemist scientists and wizards out there. All right, so let's get back to Jeremy Rys going over the resonant frequency vibration aspect of cold fusion.
The reaction. But more importantly, understanding the relation between the 50 nanometer dimension and the 14 megahertz stimulation frequency. And that's where physics has come to the rescue. In the book, What is Quantum Mechanics by the Lex Foundation, a team of scientists explain the deepest mysteries in quantum physics, namely the fine structure constant and the velocity of the quantum transition. These scientists explain that if the velocity of the quantum transition were known, it would solve all kinds of problems in modern quantum theory. They were correct. This velocity of quantum transition was revealed to us in the last place that the theoretical physicists were seriously considering. The key transition was revealed to us in the last.
Right, another key spot you see here down in the very bottom, that this is high energy white plasma, but there'll be a couple more pictures where he's showing the anodes being in a plasma state, or this arc of plasma happening right next to the cathode side and the hydrogen. And that is another major part of medium energy, and like transmutation of, for instance, hydrogen into helium and other of the noble gas elements and the ionic gases that form within that arc. So you're still able to have high transmutational rates at a relatively low energy frequency within that plasma arc that's happening within this electrolysis water action. And that's how you're getting ionized gas within water, and able to not have to replicate the pure energy and force of the mass heat and pressure and all of that that they try to do with this stupid hot fusion, which is impossible, but rather in this plasma ball, what Bob Greenyer refers to the EVOs of ball lightning. It's this cold fusion arc in that ionized gas that is a huge part of low energy nuclear reactions. I'll be showing more examples of that, but just keep this reference in mind, seeing the blue, the purple, the white, the different arc plasmas within the electrolysis reactions.
Place that the theoretical physicists were seriously considering. The key to cold fusion is artificially stimulating atoms into a state of artificially induced quantum transition, while squeezing them tightly together within the confines of a 50 nanometer lattice structure. While stimulating these atoms at their resonant atomic velocity of 1,094,000 meters per second, or 2 over 137 times the speed of light, the strong nuclear fields which bind the atom slip out of alignment, thinking they are absorbing a photon, but instead two nuclei are absorbed into one, and
that right there is another that, like, I've never heard it worded that way before, but Jeremy nails it on the spot. Let's listen to that little, the key to it of tricking it into being a photon, essentially, he's saying.
Or 2 over 137 times the speed of light. The strong nuclear fields which bind the atom slip out of alignment, thinking they are absorbing a photon, but instead two nuclei are absorbed into one, and fusion proceeds. Cold fusion is here. The Coulomb barrier is much easier to break by outsmarting the atom than trying to strong-arm it by brute force like the hot fusion scientists have been trying and failing at for years. Trillions of dollars have been sunk into hot fusion research, and hot fusion scientists have been eager to hold on to that kind of funding. It's time.
And that, I'm pausing it here yet again. This hot fusion, Like, it's just so impossible, and it's like you need to. It's so ridiculous. We first must create the most amount of energy ever possible and put it into one space just to try to force this matter into each other. Which is like, that is like just so backwards insanity of, no, you need just a small tiny little bit of energy to ding out this other bit of energy, and then it happens and replicates on this massive geometry, and thus being able to be harvested and utilized on the nano but exponential scales. When you tie in these metamaterials and these different nanotechnologies and forces, it's how nature operates as well. And there's a new article that came out. I'll have it for tomorrow ready. We'll discuss with Jeremy on Alien Scientist on his live about this Tacamac cold hot fusion that's still 15 years away and just got another $10 trillion or 100 billion or 400 billion. I don't know, trillions. It was 10 trillion, ridiculous amounts of money. And it's just like, can you please give us cold fusion researchers just like a billion, like have you something working than a year or two, and it won't make you build a sun amount of energy first to try to just get this small amount of electrical power out of it. Like, so insanity. But hey, I'm going to stop my complaining and let Jeremy take it over again with his excellent analysis, which I must remind you is 12 years old, this video. Like, props to my man Jeremy Rys and how long he's been doing this and digging it out.
Time to give cold fusion another chance and revisit the Copenhagen interpretation of quantum mechanics that Einstein never agreed with, but could never find the math to prove otherwise. If only Einstein were alive today, the theory that Frank Synardzik came up with provides such a stunning unification of quantum mechanics and special relativity that the theory could stand alone without the decades of cold fusion anomalies and positive test results staring us in the face, leading us to discover the velocity of the quantum transition and the true nature by which light interacts with atoms. In fact, anomalous low-temperature fusion reactions have been reported since 1927, when Swedish scientist J. Tandberg stated that he had fused hydrogen into helium in an electrolytic cell with palladium electrodes.
I have to pause it there because it actually goes back even earlier than that. It goes back to Walter Russell and his research and work in plasma tubes. Once again, that plasma, that ionized gas ball lightning. And Walter Russell came up with these geometric, the vortex-based periodic table, which makes complete sense, and several other octave harmonic periodic tables and sets of chemistry and stuff. And it's like, I know Walter Russell takes some skepticism for the metaphysical side and the philosophical aspects that he covered in lots of his books and drawings of over 120 years ago now. He was best friends with Tesla. They were both signed NDA orders. Like, most of Walter Russell's transmutations and plasma research was done under Bell Laboratories and still is in the Bell Laboratories Foundation. And I think also there is a Walter Russell Foundation along with the Tesla Foundation that all of this research and knowledge can be found about. So I highly recommend people look into it. Here we go. Here's another one of Walter Russell's, The Explanation of Radiation, and it's all geometry and these harmonic geometrics. Oh my goodness, there we go. And for instance, here's a hydrogen atom at different dimensional levels of where I believe the electron is or something like that. Anywho, back to the flames around it and the cold fusion jar. And right here you can see, once again, I'm talking about that plasma arc in the reaction of that cathode side there. And that's when you're going to start having hydrogen turn to helium and higher higher transmutational elemental nuclear reactions in these cold fusion electrolysis reactions. And if you've wrapped your head around that, Congratulations, you have just passed Adept Alchemy 101 Cold Fusion. Okay, let's finish this lesson up. What's next, Jeremy?
There's even evidence of low-level nuclear reactions in the geological record. Please check the links in the description of this video or visit coldfusionnow.org for a more thorough review on the mounting experimental and theoretical science to support cold fusion. Dr. Peter Hagelstein estimated that $10 million distributed to various groups working in this field would be enough to take it to the next level. If you are interested in funding research that could solve some of the biggest problems on our planet, there are many opportunities to be part of this exciting new discovery. If you are a cold fusion researcher or scientist, please contact us. We'll help to get your story told. If you are an activist and would like cold fusion literature, or a student who wants something serious to show your professor, please visit the website or check the links in the description below. For a technical and up-to-date scientific text on cold fusion, I highly recommend Dr. Edmund Storm's book, Science of Low Energy Nuclear.
Are you cold curious too? Can I self-identify as being cold curious? I'm curious in cold fusion thing.
Reaction, and absolutely check out the work of a guy named Frank Znaidarczyk, and try plugging Znaidarczyk's constant into Wolfram Alpha to see what happens. The remainder of this video is an adaptation from Dr. Eugene Malov's book Fire from Ice, Searching for the Truth Behind the Cold Fusion Furor. This is quite possibly the best book that you can buy for a basic introduction to cold fusion. Gene Malov was an MIT scientist who was found murdered on May 14, 2004 in Norwich, Connecticut, while cleaning a recently vacated rental property owned by his parents, the home he...
Thank you for that investigating reporting and looking into this, Jeremy. Like, I wondered what happened to this guy. Like, he was so amazing. I'd seen so many interviews and like presentations of him in early YouTube and internet days talking about cold fusion and stuff. And yeah, that's horrible that he is another victim of the suppression that happened, that he ended up getting murdered due to his real cold fusion research. That's horrible, and thank God we are in a different time era. We are in a new realm, a new time, and it is time to take cold fusion to the next level, that intergalactic level, interdimensional level, that plasma state level. And yeah, this guy, man, I'm gonna have to do an episode all on him. He's like almost like a Tom Bearden, like a Stanley Meyer, and like MArttin Fleischman, and Pons, and Bob Greenyer. Bob Greenyer is our man. I'm gonna be playing some of the episode with him and Jeremiah in it from a couple months ago after this, but I'm going to shut the hell up and let Jeremy continue.
He grew up in. Although police investigators chalk it up to a botched robbery attempt, no one has yet been convicted of the murder, one of the many still unsolved mysteries in the cold fusion drama. Skeptics have written 100 obituaries for cold fusion, the unprecedented miracle or mistake that burst out of Utah into the public arena on March 23, 1989. But despite many unanswered questions about what cold fusion is or is not, evidence for the phenomenon, or phenomena, is now much too compelling to dismiss. Some would call these scientific clues only provocative. I choose to say compelling. With an electrical power supply hooked up to palladium and platinum electrodes dipped in a jar of heavy water spiked with special lithium salt, chemists MArttin Fleischman and B. Stanley Pons were thought to have unleashed one of the wildest goose chases in scientific history. Now there is a significant possibility that they have discovered a quite revolutionary phenomenon that, along with hot fusion, could conceivably turn the world's oceans into bottomless fuel tanks. Cold fusion is very likely to be real after all. Despite many roadblocks that arose against confirming it as a new physical phenomenon, it is now here to stay. For a time, negative experiments and widespread skepticism seem to have put cold fusion permanently on ice. Incredulity still runs deep. But cold fusion research is now very much alive in laboratories far and wide. It moves forward through those scientists with intense curiosity and courage to pursue these studies in face of mountains of ridicule. There is no chance whatsoever that cold fusion is a mistake. There is exceedingly remote possibility that cold fusion is a collection of many mistakes made in nuclear measurements of many different kinds, in heat measurements of great variety, and in all manner of controlled experiments. But to believe that hundreds of scientists around the world have made scores of systematic mistakes about the nuclear and the nuclear seeming anomalies that they have reported is to stretch credulity to the breaking point, to distort the meaning of scientific evidence to absurd limits. Cold fusion is not pathological science, as many have charged, but for critics to continue to describe it as such, or to ignore it, is completely pathological. Current evidence suggests that nuclear processes are actually at work in what first seemed to be merely tabletop chemical experiments. This is absolutely shocking, and the root of widespread disbelief in cold fusion among scientists. It is really quite amazing by what margins competent but conservative scientists and engineers can miss the mark when they start with the preconceived idea that what they are investigating is impossible. When this happens, the most well-informed men become blinded by their prejudices and are unable to see what lies directly ahead of them. Arthur C. Clarke, Profiles of the Future. Cold fusion phenomena are now seen in very dissimilar but related physical systems: pressurized gas cells, electrochemical cells with molten metal salts, and metal chips and films alloyed with fusion fuel. To an extent, the phenomenon has remained not repeatable at will, but repeatable, to be sure, in a statistical sense, and sometimes now with very high confidence. The same has been true in the early development of certain solid-state electronic devices as well, don't forget. The measurement of power in the form of heat coming from some cold fusion cells is extraordinarily impressive, tens to over 1,000 times the energy that could emerge from any conceivable chemical reaction. If the numbers from some experiments are to be believed, they add up to tens and even hundreds of kilowatt hours coming from each cubic centimeter of cold fusion cell electrode material, about the volume of a stack of 2 pennies. You know what a kilowatt hour of electricity is when you pay for 10 100-watt light bulbs turned on for 1 hour, or more vividly, a kilowatt hour is the energy of motion in a 4,000-pound car traveling at 140 miles. A 1 megawatt coal-fired power plant uses about 20,000 rail cars of coal per year to run it. A 1 megawatt cold fusion power plant would only require half a ton of heavy water per year. Furthermore, and most important, there is now a theoretical basis to begin to understand these apparent cold fusion phenomena. Through a sometimes tortured, contentious process, the truth ultimately triumphs in science. This is scientific research done in the real world, not by idealized textbook prescriptions. Science is not conducted by pull, nor by appeal to authority or public opinion, nor always shackled to an imperfect and occasionally obstructive peer review process.
And I am replaying that because, like, just listen to how beautiful that is that Jeremy just states. The real description of what science is. Like, just,
And even hundreds of kilowatt hours coming from each cubic centimeter of cold fusion cell electrode material, about the volume of a stack of 2 pennies. You know what a kilowatt hour of electricity is when you pay for 10 100-watt light bulbs turned on for 1 hour, or more vividly, a kilowatt hour is the energy of motion in a 4,000-pound car traveling at 140 miles. A 1 megawatt coal-fired power plant uses about 20,000 rail cars of coal per year to run it. A 1 megawatt cold fusion power plant would only require half a ton of heavy water per year. Furthermore, and most important, there is now a theoretical basis to begin to understand these apparent cold fusion phenomena. Through a sometimes tortured, contentious process, the truth ultimately triumphs in science. This is scientific research done in the real world, not by idealized textbook prescriptions. Science is not conducted by pull, nor by appeal to authority or public opinion, nor
that right there. Science is what is a real science? It's not public opinion. It's not pressurized by distorted results or special interest groups or corruption. No. Real science is you do an experiment, you build something, you test it, and what happens? And you have a 50% control group. You have to have 50% control group minimum. You know, like that's just with tests, like before you even put on a general population. And then this peer review. Look at this, right? Like, oh, let's take some, I've got an idea that'll get us to the moon or to Mars or to another star. We're going to club you down first. Sorry there, Byrne. Sorry, bud.
Or always shackled to an imperfect and occasionally obstructive peer review process. Science proceeds through dogged, experimental, and theoretical effort. Now that many more facts are available and the furor has quieted down, the cold fusion drama can be revisited in its delicious and delirious detail. The story of cold fusion is a human drama. There were fights to publish and to forestall publication, issues of priority of discovery, funding matters, misinformation and disinformation, rumors that became fact, questions of academic standing, and even allegations of scientific deceit. The hard lessons in science learned in the quest for cold fusion will depend on the ultimate resolution of the scientific questions. But whatever the outcome, some things are already quite clear. Number 1. Spectacular resistance to paradigm shifts in science are alive and well. Plasma fusion physicists were extremely reluctant to consider new fusion mechanisms, even though they knew very well that the environments of electrochemical cells and palladium metal atomic lattices were remarkably different from the high-temperature gaseous systems to which they were accustomed. Number 2, majority does not rule in science. It is a gross mistake to draw conclusions about the validity of reported findings by polling the membership of this or the other scientific organization or panel. Number 3, Irving Langmuir's rules for identifying so-called pathological science are best retired to the junk heap for prejudice and name-calling. Number 4, Occam's razor is too easily forgotten. In science, the simplest unifying theory or connection is often the most appropriate. Better to have a single explanation to bridge a host of apparently related phenomena than to concoct Baroque excuses for why multiple independent experiments may all be systematically incorrect. Any possible nuclear effect, even a tiny suspected one, such as low levels of neutron particle emissions, seemingly unconnected with the heat production, should have been a tip-off that other puzzling and erratic effects in similar physical systems might also have something to do with nuclear phenomena. Number 5. Use extreme caution in dismissing experimental results just because theory suggests that they are impossible. Theory must guide science, but it should not be allowed to take the driver's seat, especially when exploring the frontier. Number 6. The fear that possible scientific error would be ridiculed, or worse, interpreted as fraud, is stultifying. A witch hunt against cold fusion affected researchers. Some who wanted to work in the field did not get involved for fear of scorn. Others hid positive results from colleagues, anticipating career problems. And some laboratory managers refused to allow technical papers to be published on positive results obtained in their organizations.
A witch hunt, eh? Like a witch hunt like on Alchemist, and how alchemy is, ooh, it's just the foundation of medicine, chemistry, and God knows what else, biology, electrobiology, or biological chemistry, whatever, biochem, there we go. And so much more. It's just insane. But no, you can't make public those results that prove this replication of cold fusion over and over and over again. No, we can't allow that. No, definitely not.
Incredibly, some scientists publicly decried cold fusion while privately supporting its research. Number 7, the peer review process by which articles make their way into journals is not infallible. While peer review is meant to act as a filter against spurious results and sloppy science, mismanaged or unchecked, it can be a tyrannical obstacle to progress as well. It is unwise to be persuaded by the editorial position and selection of technical articles that appear in a single well-respected publication. And finally, number 8, vested scientific interests are not easily persuaded to share their resources. Too small a total funding pie, in this case, limited federal expenditures for energy research, led naturally to rivalry and anti-scientific tendencies that would have moderated with a policy of broader research support. The hot fusion fraternity, like any scientific community with its back to the wall, may find it difficult to draw impartial conclusions about a perceived threat to its dominance. And if you want more, you'll have to read the book. This video is dedicated to Dr. Eugene Maloff and the future of cold fusion research and development as a viable source of alternative energy. The cold fusion revolution is alive and well, resurrected from its grave and ready to make a comeback. But we can't do it alone. We need your help. Send this video out to as many people as you can. Help us get the word out there. Give cold fusion the chance it needs to prove itself, and I promise you won't be disappointed this time. The science is real, and to ignore the mountains of evidence in front of us is to gamble away the promise of a clean energy future that might have already happened if it weren't for attitudes and ignorance. Thank you.
All right, so that's a pretty epic video right there. 15 minutes long, 12 years old, and so much good info in it. So that's, you know, it's I look forward to talking, Jeremy, about this further, and to bring up to speed what we've been doing and so many more. I'm gonna play now some of the science stream with Bob Greenyer, myself, and Jeremiah JP. Or Jeremiah, do you want to come on as well and talk? Or sorry, actually, before I do that, no, it's time to play again the sacred geometry theory of everything. That's what I'm playing first by the alien scientist. Another one that's about 13 years old, and it's so key. And it's like, it truly is, once you start understanding what is this essential God code or universal code, this cold fusion, this alchemy universal language. Hello, Karen Bishop, Hint of Shrimp 3D, Grandmaster, Love, Red Wolf, join the technicians, JP, brother. JP, do you want to join live? I can send you the link right now. Pyramid 7, what up? What up? Of course, Illabella Live 2.0. Welcome, my friend, family, S. Lee, and Brianna Lynn. Thank you all. Victor Freeman, everyone here. Angela Baby Carson, Scotty Dubois, Esoteric Gold, Mike, of course, and all of the fam. All of you, Machine Head 69, Uso, Mud Rabbit, everybody in this community. We are learning together. That is what this is all about. Oh, Shane Tarney, if I haven't got your name, I'm sorry for not. Well, write it in the live chat right now. I'll give you a shout out. Ryan on the rocks. How is it? How are you? To join now. Welcome. Okay, so the next video, sacred geometry, and I will also be pausing it at parts and giving my 2 cents on it because, well, it's crucial in the theory of everything, and I'm so glad he calls it that because it's what it is, like the Platonic solids, this dimensional, proportional, dimensional, geometric scale, universal scale of everything, and in the metaverse, and it's key. The ones and the twos. Oh yeah, it damn straight. It's turning these ones and twos into qubits, into the quantum, and into these higher dimensional plasmoids and shapes in crystalline dimensions. And don't you worry, it's a life's work in Alchemist here, so we'll be going over it for many years to come, probably decades more. And who knows, we're going to be on spaceships together by the end of it, or a worm tunnel or something. We're getting there. We're getting to that inflection point. Anywho, how are all of you? Hope you're well. Let's get into this rabbit hole of a worm tunnel.
Begin with the most basic geometrical building blocks of two-dimensional and three-dimensional manifolds and work our way towards understanding the multi-dimensional space-time of our universe. What many of you call sacred geometry can actually be derived from logic and symmetry. Modern theoretical physics is based almost entirely around the idea of supersymmetry, since all the laws of physics are perfectly symmetric and relative. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction, which together sum to zero. This means that nothing ever really happens unless it is relative to something else. Let's start with the basics. We'll start in 2 dimensions with the problem of circle packing. The circle is just a 2-dimensional shadow of a sphere. Spheres work identical to circles as long as we stack them all on the same plane. We'll be using buckyballs for our demonstration. First, we stretch all of our magnets out into a chain. One end is north and the other end is south. So there are only 2 possible linear alignments, tip to tip and tip to tail. We see that they connect in a circle with the tip to tail alignment. If we fold that circle in half, we get a square inline alignment. This is the same alignment that you need in order to build cubes. If we take the circle apart, on both ends we see that the opposite ends repel each other. Now, if we purposely place 2 strings side by side with the poles facing in the same direction, we get a tighter arrangement of magnets. I call this arrangement staggered, since you can also build it by alternating magnets into 2 rows from a single string. Here are inline and staggered rows next to one another so you can compare the spacing. If we stack lines of these in a row in this manner, we create a 2-dimensional tiling. We notice that 6 circles will fit perfectly around a single circle in the middle, leaving no spaces. The mathematician Gauss was the first to prove that this is the tightest possible packing arrangement of circles in 2 dimensions. So next, we need to figure out the tightest possible way to pack spheres in 3 dimensions. Once again, with the magnetic spheres, it turns out that the even alignments create a tighter packing arrangement. The loosest possible packing arrangement, while still having all the spheres touching each other, is the cube, or cubic symmetry, while the tightest possible packing arrangement is the tetrahedron, or tetrahedral symmetry. The tetrahedron is the most simplistic shape, 4 sides, or faces, and 4 points, or vertices, which is plural for vertex. A vertex is a connecting point on the surface of a solid, where the edges connect together. Edges usually connect together at a single point, and these points, or vertices, usually stick out on the surface of the solid. However, if the solid has some points that stick inward, it is called a concave solid. Here you will see the simplest tetrahedron, made from 2 black and 2 silver buckyballs, to show the contrast and symmetry. This shape is naturally unstable with the buckyballs and can be difficult to get them to stick in this orientation. The trick is to rotate the balls 90 degrees out of alignment so it stabilizes the bond. You can also make larger tetrahedrons by extending the symmetry to another tier. With the larger tetrahedron, we can examine the stacking arrangement much more closely. The tetrahedron is one of the 5 Platonic solids, which are the only 5 convex regular polyhedra. Regular meaning that all the faces are congruent regular polygons, which are assembled in the same way around each vertex. Basically, every face has exactly the same shape and number of sides, and every point has the same number of edges connecting to it. Polyhedra and tilenes are both intimately related and can be categorized into a table based on the number of sides of each polygon and how many polygons touch at each vertex. For instance, if we take a square, which is a 4-sided polygon, and have 4 squares touch each other at each vertex, we get a chessboard-style tiling of the 2-dimensional plane. However, if we instead say that only 3 squares touch each other at each vertex, we get a 3-dimensional cube. If 6 triangles touch at each vertex, we get a triangular tiling of the 2D plane. But if 5 touch at each vertex, we get the icosahedron. In the same way that only certain shapes will tile the 2-dimensional plane, only certain shapes will tile the 3-dimensional plane. These shapes are known as the Platonic solids. The 5 Platonic solids are the tetrahedron, the cube, the octahedron, the dodecahedron, and the icosahedron. One of the first things I noticed when I began to study the Platonic solids was the concept of duality. Dual polyhedra are polyhedra in which the faces of one correspond to the vertices or points of another. For instance, the tetrahedron is a self-dual, since if you turn the points into faces, you simply get another tetrahedron. In fact, all pyramids are self-duals, since they are symmetric around a single base polygon. Since all regular polygons are self-duals, all pyramids are also self-duals due to their symmetry. The octahedron is the dual of the cube, while the icosahedron is the dual of the dodecahedron. Here is the smallest possible icosahedron that can be built. Or is it a dodecahedron? Depending on whether you view each buckyball as a face or a vertex, the interpretation changes. Here we make a larger dodecahedron by first pulling off 12 sets of 5, each set representing a face, and then assembling them into a sphere. If we then add another buckyball to each face of the dodecahedron, we can watch it transform into an icosahedron. This is duality. Another important concept is called truncation. Truncation is cutting the points off of each vertex. If we truncate this icosahedron by taking the points off, we get back to the dodecahedron. Truncation can happen in different steps. The middle step between...
Whew, that's a lot right there, right? Learning so much about all of these multi-dimensional geometries, and what they are is dimensions, though. That's key. These platonic solids, they're the higher dimensions, these crystalline, etheric, quantum dimensions, and crystalline, quasi-crystalline dimensions, and also structures of matter. And it's what what Sir Isaac Newton went into, and what also Walter Russell went into so much with his geometries of it and explaining it, and what the ancient alchemists also deciphered in the periodic table, and what they are. And here's some of my own buildings, coil wrappings, experiments that I've built over the years. Many of them that I still have with me today. What can we show? It's all about the toroids, though. This one is one of the most advanced windings. I got a couple of magnets in there, all sorts of different things, but I don't think I have it winded correctly. I don't. Oh, thank you, Scott, for whatever Scott is being thanked for. Hey. Oh, hello, Paul from Newcastle. Thanks for joining us. The cube, is it a a hexagram, or one of the platonic solids, the six. It's the six-sided one, the hexagram, or the hexagram in Saturn. But the black cube too, right? It does do that. Okay, what are they going? Back to the flames. Let's go for the flames, and back to rewind the platonic solids, and they're a key part to understanding my geometric dimensional thesis, that the first dimension is a disk, a second is a pole, a third is a sphere, but the sphere is also this guy, the tetrahedron, the three triangle. They fit within each other. They're a triple dimension. Then you got the cube for number 4, and the the 5-1, whatever Jeremy's talking about. Let's let him put it better together than my word salad right now.
Two duals is called rectification, while birectification produces a dual. Buckyballs are an excellent educational tool, which make learning about geometry and symmetry both fun and easy, although there is a challenge to it, because buckyballs are dipolar magnets and only stick together in certain ways. Also, they are powerful magnets, so certain shapes are unstable because the force of the magnets simply collapse them. For instance, you should be able to make a smaller dodecahedron like this out of 20 buckies, but it will collapse in on itself instead of staying in such a position. We could use mathematics to calculate the gap inside of this 20-vertex shape. Then we could order a custom ball bearing of that diameter to fit the gap, but why stop there? We could calculate the gaps of all the platonic solids and find the proper diameter filling sphere to fill the gap, given our 5mm buckyball diameter. The octahedron is perhaps the easiest. Each sphere represents a vertex, and we can simply calculate from the center of each sphere to the next, knowing the angle. Use some trigonometry, which is a complicated word for triangle math. Since all geometric shapes can be reduced to triangles, the trick to measuring things is to break them down into triangles and measure those triangles. The sides, lengths, and angles of triangles are all related to one another through simple mathematical formulas. The main one is known as the Pythagorean theorem, which the Egyptians also knew about. But it doesn't matter who invented it, when, or what it's called. The meaning of it is what is essential. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. One way to look at it is to take all the sides of the triangle and make them actual squares. The two smaller areas will always be equal to the larger area formed by the hypotenuse. The ancients who discovered this used pieces of string or rope for the sides of the triangle, and also noticed that if you took the length of string and made a circle with it, the area of the two smaller circles would always equal the area of the larger circle. The area of a circle is pi r squared, so circles and squares are both related by the number pi, which is also the ratio of a circle's circumference to its diameter. I've compiled a list of different sphere sizes with all my calculations based on the 5mm buckyballs, and will post it on my website as well as send it to the buckyballs CEO in case they decide to make different sized buckies in the future, so they will know what sizes will work and why. Maybe they will come out with a Platonic solids expansion pack or something. Buckyballs get their name from Buckminster Fuller. Buckminster Fuller is famous for his lifelong study into structural geometry and solids. M.C. Escher was a famous artist who made wonderful illustrations of elaborate two-dimensional tilings and other geometrically inspired work. Both Escher and Fuller were inspired by
there for a sec to bring up Buckminster Fuller, and that Nassim Haramein also, and Dan Winters, they all highly regard Buckminster Fuller's work with geometries, and I too have to say, like, it's another rabbit hole of geometric universal understanding that I recommend for everyone, as I do for Walter Russell's work, Nikola Tesla's, and so many more. And especially Isaac Newton's alchemy, and there will be a lot more of that to come.
Even lesser known individual, whose work is perhaps more important. Harold Scott MacDonald, or HSM Coxeter. Coxeter was the first to compile the complete list of uniform polyhedra, and also to prove that it was the complete list. Dinkin diagrams are sometimes called Coxeter-Dinkin diagrams because they were first used in a paper by HSM Coxeter in 1934, before Eugene Dinkin used them in two papers in 1946 and 47, simplifying the classification of semi-simple Lie algebras. Lie theory was developed by Sophus Lie, and Lie algebras are the same mathematics which Gerrit Lisi researched for his exceptionally simple theory of everything. This type of mathematics is everything in physics. Forces are produced by spontaneous symmetry breaking. The minimal supersymmetric standard model is one of the best studied candidates for physics beyond the standard model. Theories of gravity that are also invariant under supersymmetry are known as supergravity theories. A bit of a huge jump from the things I covered in this video, but it's nonetheless important because you'll see where the foundations of simple geometry will lead you in the future as you go further and further into these types of mathematics. For those of you interested in learning more, please check through the links in the description. And I recommend taking some math classes, as this stuff can be hard to teach yourself. I've also included a link in the description to where you can buy buckyballs. As an added bonus, I also get $5 for every set sold through that link, so be sure to use my link if you intend on buying buckyballs so I can get paid for all the hard work it takes to research, write, and put together more videos in the future. And believe me, I would do so much more if I had the time and money to do so. I also have a donate button on my website, alienscientist.com, if anyone is feeling generous. I'm going to be doing a couple more videos related to this, including one on zero theory, or the theory of nothing, which will show how the universe could be created from nothing using holographic supersymmetry. Although currently incomplete, you can check out some of the foundational work on my website. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned.
Right, and please do donate this cold fusion research, both
Most
my
people
own,
don't know the answer to this question.
And Jeremy's, all of Jeremy's work. Like, it sucks right it's not even up anymore at the moment. He's working on getting it recovered, but it was lost. Oh, excuse me. Sorry, and there we go. Silly browser started to freeze. Are we still there, everyone? Yes, we are. Okay. So with how do you guys like that decade of alien scientist in review? Some pretty epic stuff there. JP, are you gonna join live with me? Should I email you the link, or what's going on? Yeah, how about Esoteric Gold? You still there? You guys want to hop on here? What does everyone think of my new logo? Thank you, Astra. Shout out to Mindful Exposure for the awesome Burn Eye Mind's Third Eye Science Guy new logo, both on my Burn Eye YouTube channel and in the top right corner. We're also streaming on Crypto Alchemist right now, and I believe Burncron Exports clothing on Facebook. So What's everybody thinking? Daniel Foster, pleasure to have you, brother. For those that don't know, he is a fellow genius, electrical engineer, and so much more. Right. So what else did I have here that we wanted to play? How about some up-to-date alien scientists? In the meantime, just a little bit here. I was on with him last week, and Dan Solar Marshall, great guy. So, oh, thanks, Jeremiah. Jeremiah is not a fan of the new crypto logo. What? You don't like the Medicine Hat Badlands Guardian? Like, come on, man. He's iconic. He's the native iPhone dude, man. Come on, bro. Like, for those that don't know, we've got uh this guy right here. Boo. I am Burn Eye, the mind's third eye, but I am also this guy right here, Crypto Alchemist. Finally got this YouTube channel back. Now all I need is Bernard Conkin back. But come on, man. Why don't you like the Medicine Hat Badland Guardian, dude? He's like this. We're doing a YouTube meetup expedition to go check this guy out. I got a drone. We're gonna check out the geoglyphs. There's about 10 other features, heads that supposedly you can also see of them. And whatever, man. It's just one. Like whatever, bro. I'll change it up again, man. But hey. I'm also this guy. Oh, is it still the bear or is it the new? Is it? Oh, it's the new. It's the new. It's still the old bear, which is at the bottom of the channel. This guy right here, this logo. This logo is the old one, but it's also, still my trademark on both my YouTube channels. The Burn Crown Bear, live on Facebook. Burn Crown Exports. Let's see, where's Burn Crown Exports? Here we go. Yes, this one right here. Please make sure you follow and subscribe. This one right here, all three of them, please. The more followers, the better. All the links are in the descriptions. Also, Twitter and on Twitch and on Instagram and they banned me on TikTok, those savages. I got 2,000 followers in 2 months and they freaking turfed me. Anywho. Oh shit, spilt the vape juice. Well, that will happen. But yeah, subscribe to this one, and subscribe to this guy right here. There's also, Bert and Ernie, and on occasions, Crypto Burndo, my transbot, fembot. We're having a good time. We're going to be doing all sorts of streaming coming up. And just as we do streaming in the past, and this is the past one. Alien scientist, man, Jeremy Rys. So much respect for this guy and the decades of research that he has been doing. And we'll play a little clip of this first before myself and Bob Greenyer and Jeremiah, because we've seen this before.
I think it's
he seems pissed too.
it's kind of petty. And manufactured and stuff, and it's kind of a distraction because they've got John Greenwald. They know how to mislead him and lead him around and stuff, and he knows he has to obey certain rules in order to get in order to do what he's got to do, and because like he blocked me and didn't like my criticisms of him, but over some of the other things, like other conspiracy topics, where I was like, he called me like, oh, you're just this truther, and I was just like, well, like you don't have the company documents that I described, and I named the companies, and you search for these
Remember,
things
he got made for nothing,
and they don't come up, and I'm like, hey.
Okay, listen to me real quick though. I think the key to the entire story is Why was
classified for a while, but then became unclassified. You know, so if probably before a decade before first APEC of all. What was our first APEC? It was our first APEC was Mark McCandlish, who's no longer with us. You know, so we got the chance. Hey, you know, you guys might want in relativity and Dirac. So,
yeah,
Yeah, I can't find the
I
spot I
agree-
wanted
I
to talk
agree with
about
that.
the show.
So-
Sorry, guys.
When he did his APEC though, I was talking with his wife Nancy, and
Oh,
described to
and
be
then
able
I
to
found
measure
it.
Measure the resonant
And then I
frequencies
found it.
of specific elements. And I'm really hoping and waiting that he does come on a stream with us to be able to explain it further. At which point, I think that will really verify whether he knows what he's doing or if it's just all random coincidence
and chance.
I always
sort of
found
thing.
the way the metal was torn apart, like the fingers it left went from one piece to the next. It was like impossible to replicate that. It was almost if
Well,
it got
those
so
are the
hot, it
samples
would
that
fall
Bob
apart like
Greenyer has been looking at now and putting under the microscope and verifying the different EVOs that appear in them
I
in
think
those metal
all the work
samples.
that's going on in cold fusion right now. I got some other cold fusion scientists who I went to an IAP course on cold fusion at MIT, put on by.
I remember that 2 years ago, right?
Sorry, why am I having
Filmed
trouble
it.
remembering the guy's name? So,
Rest
Peter
in peace,
Hazelstein.
Mark McCandlish.
So you think cold fusion's legit, right, Jeremy?
Yeah, I think there's a lot more we don't know about it. I think that's the way. I think that's what UFOs use for their power, actually, for their propulsion systems. And then
Me.
I really think that it's legit. Mitchell Schwartz. Dr.
Oh, I was muted there. Sorry, guys and girls and everybody else in between. Whatever you are, wherever you are watching this, I hope you are having a blessed day. But yeah, so back to what I was trying to say. Next clip now. Bob Greenyer of the MArttin Fleischman Memorial Project, the original discoverers of cold fusion, Pons and Fleischman, and that Jeremy so elegantly explained at the beginning of this stream in the replay of his cold fusion video. Now, the modern work of the most forefront researcher of cold fusion, EVO, NENR, sorry, low energy nuclear reactions, cold fusion, from ball lightning or plasma state cold fusion. Bob Greenyer, myself, and Jeremiah JP from Join the Technicians and Exotic Propulsion. Make sure you subscribe to my man, JP. Oh, and RIP, Mark McCandlish. All right, here we go. Next video for everyone.
Yes, because I believe that's 100% correct. The one person that I did make some monoatomic gold, zinc, copper, silver combination for their father who was succumbing to leukemia, I believe it did actually accelerate the condition of it, which was sad. And that's why I haven't done it anymore.
Because life wants the energy that these things are able to.
It magnifies whatever field is within the area. So if you have the field of the disease there, and you don't have it pinged in to target that, and you're just putting a multiplier in with putting these materials in, it's going to multiply whatever there's the most of. And
I think it's simple.
Disease, it's going to make it worse.
I think it's simple.
If you're healthy, it's good.
Essentially, if you think the cancer cell wants to divide and it's got no breaks on its level of division, normal cells, the body is telling them to divide. They'll divide until they fulfill their role. Fantastic! It's great to see more coils. They'll divide until they have fulfilled what they've been asked to do, and then they will stop. Cancer cells don't do that. They continue to divide, and all biology will use what it can to divide as fast as it can to get the job done. And when you give ormus or you treat it with these relic neutrino condensate flux in the form of string vortex photons or black evos, they are one and the same thing effectively, and they will accelerate the division process. And so, you know, we've got things that David Hudson said in the 1980s, and now we have a deep understanding of the underlying mechanism for these things. So I kind of prefer the idea that if you can create the condensates and treat people in the right part of their body, we can generally improve health. But when I worked to try and help some people that had cancer that were after using Francesco Piantelli's service in Italy, and I went through the whole process with Francesco Piantelli. He absolutely will not permit anyone that has not gone through the normal medical procedures to access his technology. So they have to go through chemotherapy if that fails, and then they go through, you know, maybe incising and removing cancers. And if that fails and there's no hope, he will then go ahead and treat. But I never had in fact, interestingly, he uses 50 hertz. And he actually has patents out there how 50 hertz is quite good at resonating with biological media. And that's interesting because in the States you run at 60 hertz, which is against this frequency. He actually has papers and patents, I think, out there, certainly papers.
I'm so happy you're bringing this topic up specifically, because it's something I'm trying to dive deeper into my science of sound and the different frequencies of electromagnetic waves going into both music as well as electricity, the currents, and the different wavelengths that they have them operating on, and changed them and manipulated them over the years from what was more natural to what they are now.
Yeah, I mean, my brother in Israel, he has an entire record label where they remaster dance tracks to 432 hertz from whatever it is.
Okay,
yeah,
well, we have to book your brother for a future episode, please.
He's absolute legend. I mean,
what I am looking for in our series.
He basically produces a lot of trance and acid and all kinds of really fast beat music and trippy
We've got to
stuff.
trade and swap tracks sometimes, Bob. And by the way, awesome to see you here. Cannot believe you're awake. I wanted to mention a couple things.
Well, no, this is easy for me because this is my day.
Right, I figured. I was like, out of all the ones I said, Bob, it might be morning time before he's off to work and has his busy day, and we'll see if we can get him on. It worked out, and blessed to everyone being here and watching.
I'm just so amazed you got Bob on, man. If you could have got anyone else on here tonight, I mean, talk about epic. So we started the show by looking at the beautiful rendering of the Super Tour, as you called it, which is actually a fourth order tour. And a gorgeous one at that. And taking a look at this stuff. Okay, so we were just looking at these little spirals, and I'll give an instruction for anyone that wants to replicate one of these very terribly difficult to replicate things. Okay, this is one of those fiberglass rods from Home Depot, and these are used for snowplow trucks to identify where not to drive into. And anyways, you can stick this whole entire 4 or 5 foot length into a drill, and start by spiraling your wire around this rod. And because this rod is fiberglass, and because copper is springy, which can be a bit of a problem, what I did is hook up both sides of each full length to a power supply and heated the wire up, not to the point of destroying the insulation, but we're only talking about, maybe running 20 or 30 volts here at 30 hertz according to the original paper, which is not going to be a problem even if the insulation was slightly damaged. But it's not. I got it to the point where it darkened, and what that did was anneal the copper just enough so that it didn't try to unspring or unwind itself when I pulled the whole thing off the rod. And because it still had just a bit of spring to it, it was very easy to remove. So I just took those in sections, and I'll show if I can. So here's a section.
Can I step in there? Because that's a very valuable thing, what I think you've done there. But I think maybe, could there be a way where you could get one of these thermal tapes and put it around the point at which you're winding, and so you're just only applying the heat for the time it needs to do the winding, or just prior to it?
No, you couldn't, because you need to anneal the entirety of the copper loop, and if you try to heat this from the outside,
no,
or
I'm saying
with
you
the
do
torch
that,
or
but you
anything
do it
else,
as it's progressively winding.
Oh, I guess, yeah, you could.
So you're not continuously heating the whole wire. You're just doing it. You preheat it just before you go into winding, or just post heating it, like you do when you're perming someone's hair, right?
Yeah, that's actually a really good idea. If you wanted and did not have to, if you didn't have to rewind it at all or make any mistakes, and you didn't have to tighten it because it was a perfectly tight wind, or make any adjustments after putting your length on the rod, and you had already annealed it, then of course it would want to hold its shape because it's not going to want to unbend. But the trouble is that when you buy magnet wire, it's already gone through a multiple number of spoolers and rollers, and so it's going to have a bit of a memory to it, and we need to remove that first. Of course, we need to remove that without damaging the insulation, and I figured the best way to do that is actually from the inside out. So anyways, when you go to wind these things, after you get it on the rod, you take it, you take the long single coil off the rod, you wind these loops back around the rod, and what I ended up doing was just kind of running a whole long length of hot glue right down the side. Now, this is a terrible method. I would not recommend that people try this, because the hot glue, if it seeps in a little too deeply, or if you're off by, say you want to attach just 4 coils together, 5 coils together, 5 loops of each of these coils together, if it's a little too thick, it's not going to bend, and that's a major problem. So don't do that. What I would instead actually recommend doing is taking a long strip of, say, flexible tape of some kind and running a bead of silicone along it, and then setting this down into it and waiting for that silicone to cure. If you don't want to wait 24 hours for silicone to cure, yourself a 2-part silicone epoxy mix. It's not technically epoxy, but 2-part silicone. And
all right, loading. I'm just skipping ahead here to the part where I talk about monoatomics and self-organization. Start publishing in the peer review. So it's about time that I get to it.
Down on the cone. That cone was more.
I have so many
60
degrees
of
kind of
like
experiments of
120 degrees, like one of that. But I would actually
miss that show. I have to watch that episode, Bob. I'm guessing you fully covered.
No, I haven't talked about that. No. In the next couple of months, I've got permission from Shishkin to translate all his work, and you're going to see it's really spooky. It's going to be really spooky. You'll realize
we love woo woo.
What?
We love the spooky woo woo.
It's so far ahead. It's so far ahead. You're in a position where you have. It's not about having an open mind so much so that your brain falls out. It's that you haven't got closed minds so that you will automatically dismiss factual things that you can replicate yourself. There is a whole body of
exactly. Doing it and then producing it, having it, and being like, "Hey, look, we verified it. Anyone can do it," and all of us are starting to do it, and it's a wonderful thing. So this specific one was made off of 24 gold bar anode and a 100% silver cathode monoatomics, and then I've rinsed it. I made it with 5 volts of electricity, AC electricity, I find the best results is actually off of an even smaller amount of like just AA or 2 AA's to 1.5, 3 volts DC. But yeah, I rinsed the salt out of this, and it was only salt water and the 2 metals that produced this. And now after 7 washes, rinses out of the salt and just the pure monatomic, I have started experimenting consuming some of it. Don't do it before you want to sleep because it will actually keep you awake. And I've started like being able to, like, my cognitive memory and stuff has been increasing ever since. And I've been drinking the waters for about 7 years myself, and continue to do so as well, as it's very healthy. And it's actually tasting sweet now. It's literal sweet water. It's quite pleasant to drink.
Well, I would imagine that if so I imagine that the Ormos is able to cohere very effectively the relic neutrino condensate and build these clusters. And the actual cluster itself when it's not firing at high energy and blowing up and throwing high amounts of ions out, and it's not too large, then it's a much lower biological risk, but then life uses it. And my father was a farmer, and he always said, if you can ever use rainwater, use it. Do not use tap water, and especially rainwater from a storm. But of course, you've already seen those, I think is it Kelvin experiments, where you have water dropping and you have a charge separation between them. Okay, and you can actually produce a voltage. So you already know that a water drop is going to be charged. And what are we talking about? Charge clusters. It's already in the rainwater. It's already there. So rainwater is automatically, I even think it's better when you're watering your plants with tap water to actually do it through a sprayer. Because it goes up, gets charged, and drops down. It's actually better than just even drip feeding.
I love that you just put science to something I've done instinctually with my own plants and misting them forever throughout the years. Especially when I was growing my medical.
Misting through something that will cause.
Yeah, because you're spritzing it up, and it's same. That's actually the same sort of thing with HHO, how it's turning to HHO mist and HHO fuel as opposed to it just being pure hydrogens. That mist charge cluster aspect you're talking about, right?
What does a mist have in it?
I don't even know. Just the funnel, the shape.
Well, it's got a restriction valve, it's got compression, and it's going to cavitate at the very end as you spray it. If you press
it's got a hole, it will produce tori, it will produce condensing of the energy, and it will produce friction as it goes through. This is exactly what you saw with the HHO plasma going through a carbon tube, when the coherent matter wave was formed by Slobodan Stankovic using HHO. This is exactly what Leclerc was doing when he was having a perforated 1 mil or 2 mil thick aluminium sheet, and it was perforated with big holes and little holes. And what he did was he had high pressure on this end and a low pressure down that end, and it produces toroidal cavitation, focusing the energy.
And you were saying that one though had high radiation though, right? That it was dangerous to be around, and that's one of the main reasons why I don't.
And that's the beauty of Roy Schliemazer's equipment, is he's just vibrating it like a fish fin. In fact, he likes fish, and so he's vibrating. We know it produces cavitation. We know it produces ultrasonics, but it's not taking it to the max. We need to use this technology gently. There's a point at which it becomes damaging to health.
Quick question, Bob. Is that essentially what would have made Victor Schauberger's technology work as well, as cavitation?
Well, he had a lot of technology. So if you're floating logs down a flume, you've got friction on the side, and it pushes that stuff, and you get denser material in the middle. And if you're putting things through a vortex, the denser nucleons will go to the middle, so you get a higher concentration of deuterium in the center. So there's all kinds of different things where flow will do this. But if you really do intense vortexes that you see in the ultra experiments, you're going to get a bubble. On a bubble, you're going to have charge separation, but also you're going to have a dielectric boundary, and that will produce easy water on the outside of this spinning torus structure, which is going like this and like that. So you're literally creating exactly what you need, like that.
Yeah, that's so straightforward and awesome. I love the simplicity of that.
It's so simple to understand when you have a clue. And for me, this is a bit of a joke now, because I feel like I'm cheating the whole time. All of these mysteries, they just...
The Wizard of Wizards, Bob.
As Victor Schomburg said himself, comprehend and copy nature.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's all there. If you are trying to technologically tell nature what to do, then you are going to be fighting.
You're already fighting the force and having resistance instantly, as opposed to just operating in harmony and then pull the energy out.
You have to work with what nature's ontological will is. You have to do that. You have to work in the way that it wants to work. And that's not just about resonance. That's the whole kit and caboodle. You have to work with it to get the most from it. It's like, if you want to get the most from your community of people, your family, you have to work with them. If you're going to say things that are going to cause resistance, you're not going to get very far. And everyone, me included, has experienced this kickback you get when you're not working within the system, as it were. The problem is when the system is people who are already trying to fight nature, and they don't agree that you should be doing it with nature. They agree that you should be doing it as their patent says, and if they're not doing it as their patent says, then it doesn't exist.
So it's far more profitable to go against nature, because that way you have a limited resource that only you can provide.
Well, you can argue that, but if you are going with nature and you get things done a lot more energy efficiently, or you synthesize things that have high value, which people were saying, well, you can't possibly have made that with alchemy. You can't possibly. So I'm going to pay the full price for it. And you go, haha, suck at you.
Well, the reason why I say it's more profitable is because the truth is, in a future where scarcity is no longer a thing, because we can literally fabricate matter and transmute everything that we need, there really is no point to having to worry about any of these things. So who cares how profitable it is when we're not trading in profits, but instead in resources and creativity, in time and effort, in real valuable human commodities that actually equal something tangible for our biological existence. Because I'll tell you what, none of us are born with a wallet than anyone that ever has been. So,
but in many countries, you're born with debt.
Yes, you are, including mine.
You're born with an anti-wallet.
Well, technically, you're not born with that, but once you receive your false identification and social security number with your name in all caps, I mean, then your character that you've been labeled is born with that debt. But technically, at the moment of the womb, you're not born with any of that. They have to give you a social security number and assign you a value and a false name first. So technically, yeah, you're still born free.
And what are we showing there, Bert? Okay.
Okay. Man, it's just awesome to have you on and finally get a chance to talk about these coils, because I have so many experiments I'm looking forward to trying and finding out where the field is stored, how sensitive it is, and how much we can screw with it. I mean, heck, I kind of just want to take a small magnet and throw it in there and see if it'll decohere the whole thing, or if I can drag it along. There's just so many experiments that I want to explore with this thing. And if he's getting a fourth order electric,
Cosmic Dave has shown that he can build a field and then move the coil. Well, the field persists for, in his case, an hour or so, indeterminate, and he can move the coil, and actually some of the field will move with the coil and some of it will be left free in space.
Have you seen Adam's video or heard his description? Do you know Adam yet?
No, sorry.
Okay, so Adam is a fellow in our research group, and he built something over 20 years ago he called the Curious Device. It was sort of a Wimshurst machine, and it was assembled instead of using...
Oh, yes, I know. Yeah, and he produced the field, and you would do.
The same exact thing with his device. One field stayed in the room exactly where it was sitting. The other one came with the disc. What he did is he took apart the two discs. He didn't take the whole machine. He just took one of the two discs with him. One of the fields stayed with the machine in the room. The other one stayed with the disc. So he tells a really fascinating story that I find absolutely intriguing. And in the story, he's got this little home wireless phone. They don't have a particularly good range. That's well known, and lots of things can block the field. But well, I think it was a 900 megahertz. Anyways, he's walking down the block and he gets quite a ways away, way far outside of the range, at least 5 or 6 times. And he's carrying one of these discs with him, just, walking along. And he didn't realize he had the phone in his pocket. So he gets a call.
I'm with you. It teleported the communication.
Exactly. And to me, when I heard about that, I'm like, what we have here is something incredible if we can understand it. And this whole technology,
and I genuinely believe, the very best way to understand it is with proper controlled, known coils of a known size with a known folding interaction with seed germination. Because the first biological transmutation that is on record is 1698. Seed germination.
I'm about to go water half of my newly planted garden, one side of each of the rows with this monoatomic water. The other half will just get the hose. And
so I've been continuing with the monoatomic water and gardening this entire summer, and it's actually had a phenomenal result, which I've been documenting. And the last stream I did with the garden watering it, showing the lettuce, the kale, they're all 3 times the size, the Swiss chard 3 times the size in the area that had this magic water compared to the rest that was just didn't have a good year at all. So even my dad, in one of the streams recorded, without him knowing that I had been doing this, was like, my golly, Bernie, that one lettuce that survived there on that side, it's the best bumper lettuce crop lettuce ever. Although that was a horrible imitation of my father. Forgive me, Dad. Farmer Fred, a lot more together than that. Anywho, back to Jeremiah, Bob Greenyer, and my third eye.
They will both get rain.
Fantastic.
I would love your thoughts on what I'm showing here, these reddish clusters. I believe it is, and what I read in Isaac Newton's alchemy writings as well as others, they claim it's the mercury state. And this right here is a piece of zinc that has this red stuff coming off of, but I've been able to turn copper, iron, zinc, aluminum, silver, and several other metals also into this red stuff. And I'm wondering, is it actually a mercury compound that this is, and that the alchemists themselves claim that this is mercury? How would I be able to test that? And would it best bet be to send it to you to get a good result?
You can send a sample, but you can't be sure that if alchemy is involved and
it's not whether the alchemy, it's more just if I'm able to get it tested and the initial results point to it having mercury, then it would be that mercury appeared out of nowhere and was a real transmutation in this electrolysis process that just had
so obviously if you send it when I get a chance to look at it under the SEM, I can give you an indication.
There's absolutely no rush, but it's like, should we put it in the process? And it would be good to have.
You should be putting it in the process, because I can't say when I'm going to get access to a tool, but when I do, it can be on the roster. Something like that should be fairly quick.
Perfect. That is good enough for me. And it's like when the universe says the time is right, it will randomly appear to you, and you'll have that extra sample, and it'll be the perfect thing. I know, just like today works out. It's how it always does.
A friend of mine is working on a coil system that he has seen multiple times the production of strange materials dropping out of that system, little black beads on the bench, and has also seen the leads of other common electronic components completely eroded away. And they're usually pretty darn tough. They either have a nickel or a tin plating commonly, and they're not particularly subject even to a slightly acidic vapor environment. So whatever he's producing around these coils, and even if it's ozone, obviously that's not going to eat through these metals in the way that it has. So what he's set out to do now is take some plates. I've asked him to polish them highly and clean them off with rubbing alcohol. So he's starting with a nice, clean sample that's flat of various materials. I guess he's got iron, he's got copper, he's got aluminum, I think he's got zinc. We talked about getting nickel, a variety of other various materials that he can send to you in small sizes. Now, what size sheet would you prefer if you were to say throw all these things in the SEM and pump it down just to make the job easier? What size metal samples that have been
I would, to make my life easier, this particular SEM is a 10 by 10 centimeter stage, and it can take things at 6 centimeters high. But obviously, in terms of shipping something, you want it as small as possible and innocuous as possible. Always put samples in plastic, and what you could do is pre-mount the individual samples on a larger thin sheet of metal, let's say aluminium, because the stage is already got an aluminium base, and then I can put it in there and look at 10 samples at a time without too much effort.
Well, if that's the case, it's no problem to pre-mount, but I do not want I don't want to accidentally suggest that he use an adhesive that's going to outgas inside the SEM and cause you problems.
So you can buy standard carbon tape mounts, and you could get an aluminium plate and put the round carbon tape mounts on there, which are sticky on both sides. You can't see hydrogen, and carbon, you're not going to see through the metal sample, the carbon underneath. And so you then stick them in an array, and you then package that in plastic, and then send that as a thing. And I just drop it in there, and I go boom, 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 boom.
I'll pass that along to him.
Yeah, and even if he's got a thin aluminium sheet, he could then actually mark S1, S2, S3, S4. And when you see it on the SEM, you'll see the samples and you'll see which one we're looking at. And it's all self-consistent. One video, you're done.
Yeah, that'll be no problem at all. You won't have any problem with that. This sounds pretty darn good. I'm very interested to find out if something as simple as a coil device operated at the right kinds of frequencies and potentials that it's clearly already producing these kinds of effects. It's eroding surfaces that should be pretty resilient and robust. It's causing problems with other metals, and it's producing apparently strange materials that he's not sure exactly what they are. So
here's the thing. I've talked about this in relation to the accelerated decay of material and long-term decay of Hutchison effect materials. And what it is that charge clusters act like mega electrons, right? And they absolutely love oxygen. So if you've got something like aluminium and it likes to be oxidized quickly, as everyone knows, you score your aluminium pan and immediately it starts to oxidize. Imagine that taken to the max, where paramagnetic oxygen in the air, and it is the most paramagnetic gas, basically. You have to go up to lanthanides to have more paramagnetic materials. And so it's a unique gas. And it interacts with charge clusters like nothing else. And so if you have metals in which we know charge clusters, exotic vacuum objects, microball lightning, whatever, like to live, and you've synthesized them in there by either resonant nodes of phonon vibrational modes, or by impinging resonance.
Okay, so we paused that there. For the rest of that full 3-hour video. It's called Science Stream with Bob Greenyer, Bernai, Jeremiah, Year of the Coil. It's a 3-hour full stream on my Crypto Alchemist YouTube channel, or it's a 1.5 hour of me, Jeremiah, and Bob Greenyer on the MArttin Fleischman Memorial Project YouTube channel. You can access the rest of this video at. I'm going to finish things off with a little bit from a clip showing the actual cold fusion with this plasma, again, producing helium out of the hydrogen, the transmutations with these EVO and LENR state, the low energy nuclear reaction that's in this ball lightning, essentially, or this plasma arc. But the ionized gas atoms within the flame, within cold flame, within the electrolysis, within the water, within this cold fusion and this cold nuclear fusion. And this video was streamed on Bernai Mind's Third Eye Science Guy YouTube channel about a month ago. Let's get it up here. Alchemy, electrolysis, cold fusion video. Here we go. And I'm playing a video that is key to understanding helium from hydrogen, electrolysis, cold fusion, plasma, nuclear reactions. Notice also that cold fusion plasma is always ultraviolet in color, as opposed to the hot fusion when it turns into flame and you have your red, orange, yellow plasma states reactions. And that's where modern nuclear fusion plants are still 15 years away, and they're going to be something, but it's just so impossible, and they're actually retarded because they're trying to have to get the solid metal materials into a hot plasma state, which then takes millions of degrees centigrade, and it's just insane. And they're trying to just push it together with maximum energy and everything that no, you don't want to have to recreate the sun to get your reaction going, and that's absolutely idiotic. Cold fusion is the exact opposite, where it's the smallest amount of energy to trigger the reaction of just vibrating on that same wave, that same little frequency, resonant frequency of the atom, of what you are, the matter that exists and what you're aiming for, and switching them out, and from photon light to electrical to physical atom and everything in between. Back to watching that cold fusion, arc, ultraviolet, cold plasma, in electrolysis, water, small amount of voltage, very, very cold, or not cold, but low energy, low temperature, producing two hydrogens into helium. And after we finish watching this happen, I will read to you what the hell I was just rambling about, this brand new article on the future of fusion, nuclear fusion, and how it's so stupid, and how they just got $10 billion worth of funding, and hopefully it'll be built in 15 years. It's like, can you just give me 1 million of that 10 billion, and I will get you your cold fusion reactors and your AKA fusion reactors going in 2 years, 5 years for operating. Please fund our cold fusion research. Designs. And look right here, little reactor already working, proving it. Let's test it. Give me money, government or private angel investor. Let's angel investor. Anywho, enough of my rant. Let's continue.
Amperage is going anywhere from 3 to 2, and that's the fusion process that supposedly is impossible. It's 182 Fahrenheit. That's warm. See, we're about a 1 3/4 to 2 amps fluctuating. 260 volts. And the temperature is going up slowly. Steam is starting to come out. We're steaming the water in only a few seconds of action. And it sounds cool too. Here, get a closer sound of that. Kind of sounds like a Ferrari underwater, huh? That's cool. Now, look at the what's up meter fluctuating. Might be losing an insulator. Okay, that's exciting. All right, our thermometer is officially not happy. And we're producing steam here, kids. All right. There it is. It works. We're done.
It's paradigm shifting. All the problems on this planet, bar natural phenomena, are caused by human beings. They're caused by the condition.
In me,
The great
stupid ads. Where's the ads coming from? Ah, I hate the ads.
all
What's
of the
going
suffering
on?
because it deals with the fundamental insecurity.
Why is it the stupid commercial? Sorry, I thought didn't realize the torus shape structure that is the universe and the magnetic field. Bob has also been doing a lot with that lately. Hey. Okay. All right. Okay, I was unmuted the whole time. Sorry. Now, and thank you for all of that. And we're going to finish tonight's stream off with one more old relic, decade old, but just as relevant and unbelievably good, well done video by the alien scientist, quasi-crystals and photonic circuits. This video has about over 3/4 million views. It was published 15th September 2008. So yeah, 13 years, 14 years old, or 11. I don't know.
Evidence to prove the existence.
I'm usually good at math. I suck today. Shut up. I'm stoned. It's my bad. It's Craig's. It's Headley BC's bad. Short-term memory loss.
These
I'm
were
just kidding.
tested at Los Alamos Labs and New Mexico Tech and found to contain rare isotopic ratios only found in a very small percentage of meteorites, more like crashed alien-made machines.
Deci means 10. A decagon has 10 sides. What this means is that we have 10 numbers, and when we run out of numbers, we go back to 0 again and carry the 1 over to the next decimal place. These aren't really numbers, they're just symbols which represent numbers. After all, a number is abstract. It doesn't mean anything by itself. 3. 3 of what? 3. A number by itself, it means nothing unless it's described. Units could be based on only 2 symbols represented by numbers 1 and 0. In this system, we count to 1 and we've run out of symbols, so we have to go back to 0 and carry the 1 over to the next decimal place. The first computers were built using a series of logic gates which would switch to on or off, true or false, 0 or 1. And there are basically 4 types of logic gates which correspond to the 4 basic number operations: addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. I highly suggest reading a book or taking a class in digital electronics or electrical engineering if you really want to learn this stuff. Here's a diagram showing how to build logic gates using a frequency modulated photonic signal processor. used in these quasi-crystalline photonic circuits. I also suggest that you read up as much as you can on fiber optics. There are some people who think that both fiber optics and the transistor were both back engineered from alien technology. The transistor was invented in December of 1947, 5 months after Roswell. But anyways, I don't think the transistor was reverse engineered from alien technology, because the three men who designed it were all studying theoretical solid state physics that were directly related to the fundamental underlying principles behind how a PNP transistor would function. I also think it's quite plausible that fiber optic cables would have been invented through the genuine ingenuity and foresight predicted to use photons as signal carriers through a refractive medium index, and their eventual total replacement of modern microprocessor technology, although at the time there existed no method of nanoengineering which could come anywhere close to producing circuits this small. Photonic circuits must be constructed atom by atom. This type of technology doesn't even really exist today, although it could. It's just cutting edge. It's cutting edge. It's coming out right now. MIT has a tractor beam which can pick up and move atoms one at a time. It basically uses a specifically tuned and polarized electromagnetic wave which traps and cools atoms, allowing them to be moved by the laser. It does this by using a frequency slightly below the first electron orbit energy level of the atom, stimulating a photonic spontaneous emission of a photon. Since the atom must release a photon of a slightly higher energy than the one it was just hit by, because as it needs to release a minimum photon energy. That's how you can tell what atoms are by the spectrum, by spectrometer, by looking which frequencies of light that they emit. They have to emit a light of a certain energy, a certain frequency. So when it has to emit and it doesn't have the energy for it, the energy comes from somewhere, so it cools down the atom. It takes out of the internal kinetic energy, slowing it down, cooling it. A separate laser tuned to a different frequency slightly higher than the first electron orbit will conversely heat the atom. So you can heat them up, put them into place, cool them down so that you can mold a crystal or a structure one atom at a time for absolute precision. Heat is used to break and re-solidify chemical bonds in order to form like solids. You can use two lasers combined to heat and cool and move atoms around. We can literally perform nano construction, although the process of building something one atom at a time would take forever. That is why the alien nano construction facility would need to have hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of these tiny lasers going all at once. Picture a giant football stadium where the entire dome over the top was covered in tiny laser heads, which were all pointing down onto an object smaller than a flea at the center of the 50-yard line. This is the type of nanoengineering facility I'm talking about. It would take a week or maybe even months to produce a single giant craft, standard size
hint of shrimp
spaceship. The process would be to create an environment with the correct pressure and temperature to allow crystal formation, and then use laser assistance to actually build the crystals and aid in their formation and construction. The more beams, the faster the construction can take place, so photonic quasi-crystals need to be manufactured using this type of precise laser placement of atoms in order to build the nanostructure of the actual circuit itself. So many of these circuits are built using metamaterials for the signal transmission lines. Metamaterials are for the axioms, the dendrites, with the signal carriers. The metamaterials have a negative refractive index, which allows certain frequencies of light to pass through them at superluminal speeds. So you have literally faster than light computing. It would just be insanely quick. Human scientists are only just beginning to unlock these secrets and be able to replicate this technology. It's still about 20 years off. But once fully developed, this technology will make computer chips 100 times smaller than the smallest chips as of the date of posting this video, and allow them to run off the ambient electromagnetic energy that permeates through all space and time. This is truly remarkable. Don't forget to rate 5 stars and subscribe to my channel. Questions, comments, you know what to do.
Whoa, that video is so old that it was back when YouTube was rated by 5 stars. Do you guys remember that?
Small. Everything just outside the realm of quantum.
Long time ago. So if you don't, that's how old that video is. My goodness gracious. So this last video by the alien scientist, nano-engineering super materials. It's also relevant to the cold fusion and the metamaterials. It's 8 minutes long. We're almost finishing up here, but we got another 10-12 minutes left together in this epic low energy nuclear reaction cold fusion video research. There we go. Nano engineering super materials, aka metamaterial.
Nanoscience is the science of the incredibly small, everything just outside the realm of quantum physics. That is everything larger than the smallest size possible, which is h bar over 2 pi. Nanotechnology is the pathway to the future, the next age. As we enter a transition point between the information age and the nanotech age, we are reminded that we are living in what is probably the most difficult and amazing step in human progress of all time. Alien nanotechnology would be thousands of years more advanced than our own. They are at the point where they can build things atom by atom. This is called nanoengineering, and it can be used to build anything you want to build, as small as motors, refrigerators, computers, gears, circuits, you name it. Nanotechnology can also be applied to material science and materials engineering. The ultra-smooth, ultra-durable foil that was reportedly found in the debris at Roswell by Jesse Marcel and a few others, it's this ultra-thin foil that they crinkled up into a ball, and then when you let it rest, it would uncrinkle itself, becoming mirror smooth again with no signs of damage, and you couldn't cut it with a pocket knife. This is another example of a nano-engineered material. To create a thin film with these characteristics, you would need to manufacture a material with nanomechanical properties, which would allow it to bend and fold completely in half without breaking any chemical bonds. It's basically a mechanical crystal, a crystal which is built out of nano levers and nano springs that can bend and flex at the molecular level without breaking. Chemical bonding is what holds atoms together. This is the reason that all these tiny atoms in the universe don't just fall apart. They stick together and form solids due to the electromagnetic interactions of different atoms. Try to think of atoms as tiny magnets, but not regular magnets with a north and south pole. These magnets work on a different set of rules based on the filling of electron orbits, the Lewis structure. Nonetheless, you can think of them as tiny magnets. Some are strong magnets and some are weak magnets. The stronger the magnet, the stronger the bond, and the stronger the bonds that make up a material, the stronger that material will be. What is in many ways equally important is the structure and arrangement of atoms in a solid. Crystals, which have an ordered structure, tend to be very strong because of their structure. Diamond, for example, was the strongest material known to man. Diamond has fourfold tetrahedral symmetry, which is extremely rigid because the chemical bonding of the carbon atoms combined with the distribution of forces within the crystal lattice structure. These strong chemical bonds and the lattice structure allow forces to be distributed and absorbed to an astounding degree. The strongest grid structure found in nature is the hexagon of a bee's honeycomb. Spongy bone tissue is a way to combine strength with light weight. The material we're going to talk about has all these characteristics. The hexagon of a bee's honeycomb has six-fold symmetry. Diamond has four-fold symmetry, but this nano-engineered super material, which we're going to talk about next, which the aliens use for the skeleton of their craft, has 12-fold symmetry. 12 is divisible by both 6 and 4, combining the two strongest symmetries in nature. The material must be made in the zero-gravity atmosphere of outer space, where gravity can't mess up the surface gradient, causing crystalline deformation. You have basically form the crystal using flux growth technique, gradient freeze methods. The crystals are formed in bubbles of diverging sizes, larger bubbles toward the center of the material and smaller bubbles toward the surface of the material. That way it mimics the strength and lightweight characteristics of spongy bone. The diverging bubble size optimizes the strength and weight of the material. In this case, it custom nano-engineered it for use in spacecraft, aerospacecraft. The material is strongest at the surface where the bubbles are the smallest. It is literally 11 times harder than diamond at the surface, down to about 5 times harder than diamond at the center where the bubbles are larger. This material is used to make the shell or skeleton of the craft. This is the material that was described as the bakelite debris found at Roswell. It is formed by a laser-enhanced growth process using sinusoidally polarized electromagnetic waves to trap and cool the atoms individually, adhering them to the correct position within the crystal's lattice structure. MIT's already developed a tractor beam which can move around atoms and place them individually. This is basically what they have. They have 1 million of these things going at once, which grow the crystals during the phase change from crystals always grow during the phase change from either liquid to solid, freezing from the point of fusion, or when a gas transfers sublimation. Crystals can also be grown from dissolved particles in a solvent when you evaporate the solvent, but that's not how we grow these specific type of crystals. The most commonly used crystal growing technology in use today is the flux growth technique, where they use magnetic field lines to propagate crystal growth. Basically, the crystals will grow along and follow the magnetic field lines. However, current technologies can't achieve the accuracy to produce a perfect crystal with absolutely no deformities, imperfections, or any irregularities whatsoever within the crystalline lattice structure. Nature can't even produce this, but nano-engineering can, and when it does, it produces things that are 11 times harder than diamond. See, diamond has all its weaknesses and the imperfections in the crystal structure, so when it breaks along the lines of these imperfections. So if you were to build diamond with no imperfections, it would be harder than regular diamond. As for physicist Bob Lazar is absolutely correct when he stated that everything in these machines is engineered to the utmost, nano-engineered would be a better word for it. Unfortunately, that's one of the only things that Bob Lazar got right. You see, what is often done in highly secretive, compartmentalized black operations, such as the kind of back engineering research that goes on at Area 51, it is a common practice to feed individuals involved a great deal of misinformation or disinformation, which is unrelated to the individual's specific line of study. So if you were contracted to back engineer the propulsion systems, you would be fed all sorts of disinformation about all the other systems and workings of the craft. So in case you ever went public with any information, you could be discredited and used to relay more disinformation to the public from a seemingly credible source. It's one of the things they use. They're very, 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 very secretive. It is absolutely imperative that you understand that A, we are not alone, and B, there is a massive government effort to keep the truth covered up. And with aliens, it's not very hard because they make themselves scarce, and it's pretty much ridiculed by people who don't have a brain to really sit and think about this kind of stuff. So I've just described for you some of the methods that they use to hide and disguise the truth. This is what has allowed them to get away with it for so long. That combined with the total unwillingness of certain people to accept the truth. If you don't believe me, go look up military classification and read the definitions of top secret and above top secret. It'll tell you exactly why the government doesn't tell us the truth. I figured if you're watching this video, then you're obviously at least looking for the truth. We should never stop looking for the truth. So please ask questions, point out any flaws or corrections. Don't forget to rate 5 stars and subscribe to my channel in order to help spread this information faster. I have plenty more videos to come.
Right, so please do subscribe, share these videos out, angel investors, donations, please do. Fundraising right now, trying to get money together so we can pull off this investigation of the Medicine Hat Badland Guardians. I really would like to get out here in the next few weeks and do a YouTube meetup together and investigate this site. Sorry guys, there we go, and girls, and anybody else in between. Had to pause the alien scientist in the background. Jeremy Rys, thank you for your works that you have done. I will be live with Jeremy tomorrow, and hopefully Jeremiah Pop will be joining us too, with on the Alien Scientist channel. And yeah, so come on, donate to Burn Eye, the Mind's Third Eye Science Guy, so we can I can take the drone out, get some aerial footage of these sites. This is not pareidolia, people. The Medicine Hat Badland Guardians. Like, let's get us out there. Let's do this meetup. Let's make it happen. It's going to be a wonderful, wonderful time. And also documenting these geoglyphs. Like, you see those lines, what the Ferrum Foundation claims are these megalithic stone lines. And if we can go there and take pictures, document the megalithic building of these lines and angles, and that is the foundation of this epic ancient geoglyph radial plotting, that this global map plotting architecture of such advanced ridiculousness, and coming from these Medicine Hat Badland Guardians. And I want to check out all these other ones, that these other features that also could be like, look down at the Badland Guardian there, right behind him, the Yelling Native. That actually also looks like maybe even an Oriental individual. Who knows? Right there. And also the Long-Nosed Man, the Birdman, the Dragon Guy, the Alien Head, he says. But yeah, like, there's so many of these in that one valley. Like, that is not pareidolia. Like, just the statistic and possibilities, the terraforming, the super advanced technology and the construction methods and engineering, and just, it's insane. So let's get out there, let's do it together. And yeah, tomorrow, Alien Scientist. Monday night, Autodidactic, the Autodidactic Alchemist series with Autodidactic, my good brother from Australia, Autodidactic 1 and 2. I guess I can show my face again. Hey, I love you all. We just passed 2 hours, 2 minutes and 22 seconds. We're now 44 seconds. I love you all. And on this note, good night, good day, wherever you are, whenever you are. If you watch this full 2 hours, you are on the way to being an adept alchemist. I love you all. We'll catch you tomorrow and on the next one. And we're doing it for the science, right? Doing it for the science. Are you doing it for the science? Be the change you want to see. Help build this better world. We're coming together. We're making it happen. Anything we set our minds to and we work together with, we can accomplish. And on that note, stay blessed. I love you all. We'll see you next time.